Welcome back to Mr. Charles' Stories family. The air hung low, thick with early December haze. It was that kind of cold that crept through even the best coats, biting skin and silencing streets. Cars sped past the shoulder of a narrow service road just off I-95, tires hissing, eyes forward, no one stopping. She didn't wave them down. That's what made Lorien notice her. She stood still beside a tired sedan, hood open, engine steaming like a broken kettle. One arm held a fussy baby wrapped in two mismatched blankets. The other gripped a tire iron she probably didn't know how to use. But there was no panic, no pleading, only stillness. Stillness, and a kind of quiet resolve that wasn't loud but said, "I've been through worse." His driver slowed at the light. Lorien looked up from his phone. She didn't fit the usual roadside scene. Most people panicked. She didn't. Most people flagged others down. She stood still, eyes fixed forward, like she didn't expect anyone to help and wouldn't ask even if she did. The driver turned his head. "We're running behind, Mr. Vale." "Pull over," Lorien said, already unbuckling. He stepped out into the wind without his coat. Suited in navy wool, dress shoes hitting gravel, he crossed toward the woman with careful strides. The baby whimpered louder. Still, the woman didn't flinch. She shifted the baby slightly, watching him like a stranger at her door. "You need help," Lorien said, crouching beside the steaming hood. "I'm used to not getting it," she replied calmly. Her voice was quiet, tired, controlled. She didn't blink, didn't look up at him properly. Lorien blinked first. "I've got jumper cables in the car," he said. "If it's the battery, we can—" "It's not," she interrupted. "It's the radiator. Hose split." "How far were you trying to go?" "Far enough." That made him pause. He stole a look at the baby, who'd calmed a little, big eyes scanning everything around her. Sharp eyes, alert, unafraid. He stood up slowly. "Mind if we give you a lift?" She looked at her car for a long beat, then back at him. "Why?" "You look like someone I was supposed to stop for." For the first time, her face cracked slightly. Not a smile, not even a softening, but she nodded. He opened the back door of his car himself. No valet, no assistant. She climbed in carefully, placing the baby on her lap. Lorien slid in beside them, adjusting the heat as the door closed. He offered a bottle of water. She took it. "I'm Lorien," he said. "I didn't ask." He glanced at her, sharp edge. "I'm Mira," she added quietly. He turned toward the window. "Let it sit." She gave an address somewhere on the east side. He knew that block. 10 years ago, his company bought an old warehouse nearby for a future tech campus. The deal fell through. The poverty didn't. As they drove, the baby started to fuss again. Mira rocked her gently. "Shh, love." "I know. I don't mind," Lorien said. "I wasn't apologizing." That made him smirk. She had a backbone, maybe too much for someone in her position, but that's what made her interesting. The baby reached toward Mira's neck, tugging at a small silver chain with a chipped blue stone. Lorien's chest tightened. That necklace. It wasn't mass-produced. He knew because he had the other one. Or thought he did. The stone was chipped in the same place. He stared at it long enough for Mira to notice. She tucked it under her shirt with a quick glance. "Old. Doesn't mean anything." He didn't respond. Didn't even breathe right. Because it did mean something. It meant everything. 10 years ago, his mother had handed him a velvet pouch after a long, uncomfortable conversation. Inside was that necklace, supposedly retrieved from the belongings of a child who hadn't survived. A child he never met. A child born to a girl he hadn't seen since college. A child named Mira, he said aloud. She raised an eyebrow. "You said your name was Mira, right?" She nodded slowly. He looked down at the baby, then at her again. "Pretty name." "It was my mother's." She lied smoothly. His phone buzzed. He didn't look. He sat still the rest of the ride, eyes quietly on her, on the baby, on the necklace. When they reached her address, The building loomed like a broken promise. Cracked bricks, a rusted entry gate, flickering lights upstairs. "I'll walk you in," he said. "No need. I insist." She looked him over once before nodding. He stepped out, held the car door. She adjusted the baby, gathered a backpack from the floor, and walked with him through the gate. The stairs creaked beneath them. When she reached the 3rd floor, she hesitated. "Thank you. You sure you're safe here?" She nodded, not convincingly. He handed her a card. "If anything happens, call this number." She hesitated, then took it. "You always rescue strangers?" "No." "So, why me?" Lorian's voice was low. "Because you didn't ask." She slipped inside without another word. He stood there a moment longer. When he returned to the car, he didn't speak. Instead, he pulled up the name Mira Vale on his phone and stared at the contact entry from a decade ago. It wasn't a coincidence. Not anymore. Lorian didn't go home that night. Instead, he rerouted the car to one of his properties on the East End. A converted mid-rise he owned under a holding name, mostly used for corporate stays and high-level client housing. On the ride over, he spoke softly into his headset. "Reserve a suite. Discreetly. Put her name on it. Mira Ruin." The assistant didn't ask questions. No one on his team ever did. He stared out the window as the city blurred by, his jaw tense. That necklace haunted him. The chipped blue stone, the worn silver chain, it wasn't something you forgot. The original design was custom. His mother had it made for a baby she claimed had died. And the baby's name? Mira. He took a breath as the driver pulled up to the other building. By morning, Mira would have everything she needed. Diapers, wipes, infant food, formula, clothes, toiletries, all purchased under his team's usual process, anonymous, efficient, no direct trail back to him unless needed. Still, he wasn't ready to sleep. He stepped out onto the rooftop terrace of the building, city lights glowing beneath a cold sky. Hands in his pockets, he stared out past the skyline, down past the bright facades into the dark spaces where most people lived and disappeared. He thought about the way Mira held her daughter. Protective, yes, but something more. She looked at that baby like she was her entire reason for breathing. And when Mira talked, she didn't talk like someone running from a mistake. She talked like someone who'd spent years learning how not to expect anything good. His phone buzzed again. Mom missed call 7:42 p.m. He didn't return it. Not tonight. Morning came slowly. Grey skies lingered. Traffic thickened early. Lorian checked in with his assistant before breakfast. "She hasn't used the suite key yet," she said. "You want us to cancel?" "No. Leave it active. Deliver the supplies anyway." "Understood." He paused. "Send someone to that building. Her place. I want to know if she's still there." Less than 2 hours later, the report came back. She was gone. Room cleaned out. No sign of her or the baby. No complaints filed. No rent history. A ghost. He cursed under his breath and drove across town himself. The manager of the building barely looked up when he asked. "She left before dawn," the man said. "Didn't leave a number." Lorian returned to his car, sat behind the wheel and thought. He didn't like losing things. Not people. Not chances. And this felt like both. That afternoon, his assistant called again. She checked into the suite. When, 10 minutes ago, Lorian exhaled. He didn't visit right away. Didn't want to come off strong. But by nightfall, he stood outside the door to suite 712, knocking once. Mira opened slowly. Her eyes were tired. She wore an oversized hoodie. The baby sat on the bed in a new onesie, eating crackers with both hands. The room was warm, peaceful, but Mira's body was stiff. "You send all your charity cases to suites like this?" she asked. "No." She crossed her arms. Then, "What am I?" He hesitated. "Someone I was supposed to help. You don't even know me." "I might." That made her blink. He stepped in without pushing further. Didn't sit. Didn't ask. I had them stock diapers, formula. If you need anything else. She cut him off. I don't like debts. It's not a debt. Then, what is it? A second chance. Why? He looked at the baby, calm, seated, steady-eyed, watching everything. He didn't answer her question. 2 days passed before he saw her again. He returned with groceries. Not fancy, just essentials. Bread, eggs, oat cereal, juice, paper towels. She opened the door slower this time. No hoodie. Hair brushed back. Baby on her hip. You brought food? He nodded. Just in case. She let him in. He placed the bags on the counter, glancing at the half-washed dishes in the sink. You don't cook? He asked lightly. I do, just not when someone else is paying. Lorien tilted his head. Would it help if you saw this as a refund? For what? For the decade I didn't show up. Mira didn't speak. Instead, she grabbed the receipt from the bag and scanned it. Every cent tallied. That told him something. She didn't trust Easy. He respected it. Later that evening, they sat on opposite ends of the room. The baby crawled between them, dragging a blanket behind her. What's her name? He asked. Mira looked down. Sarah. He froze. The name hit harder than expected. That's your name. I didn't think you'd remember. He looked at her closely now. Really looked. I was 22. I remember everything about that summer. Mira lowered her gaze. I left before the full term started. No one asked why. I did. Not loud enough. He swallowed hard. A long silence stretched. She added, Your mother made sure I disappeared. Paid for my silence. Gave me enough to leave and stay gone. Lorien leaned forward slightly. And you did? Not with her money. I tore up the check. I walked out and never looked back. What did she tell you? That you'd never claim a child from a diner waitress. He winced. She said you had a future to protect. Lorien didn't move. He just sat there, shame crawling up his neck. You knew none of this? She asked. No. Mira looked down at her daughter. I figured. Another silence. Then she whispered, I didn't name her Sarah out of spite. I named her after the girl I used to be, the one who believed people would do the right thing. Lorien's throat tightened. She's mine, isn't she? He asked. She's not a trophy, Lorien. I didn't say she was, but I think I always knew. Mira nodded. She's yours, she said. And she's mine. But I don't need saving. He nodded back. I do. The next morning, he sent a card up to her room. Breakfast's on the table downstairs. No strings. Elmira came down after a long pause. He watched from across the restaurant as she sat with Sarah at a corner booth. She ordered oatmeal, fruit and coffee. Nothing expensive, nothing wasteful. He paid the bill quietly and left before she looked up. But when she returned to her suite, she found something on the door handle. The same necklace, except his version. Still chipped, still hers. And, on the back, a tiny engraving. Just one word, found. The hotel suite lights had gone dim. Lorien sat alone in his penthouse across the city, blinds open, sleeves. Rolled up, glass of untouched scotch, sweating against his palm. He couldn't stop staring at the name he'd written down hours ago. Mira. It echoed through his head, like a bell from another life. She looked different now. Older, of course. Her face had lost the college-round softness and carried something more defined. Her jaw held tension. Her eyes didn't dart. They scanned, calculated. But the way she cradled her daughter, the way her voice dropped to a lullaby, he knew that voice. Sarah. He whispered it once aloud. Then again. He stood suddenly, walking toward the sleek cabinet near his fireplace. He opened the narrow drawer, the one he hadn't touched in years. Inside, carefully preserved in a small velvet pouch, was a silver chain with a chipped blue stone. His mother gave it to him 10 years ago, without tears, without guilt. Just a simple statement. They found this with her. Back then, he didn't ask much. She told him Sarah had passed giving birth. Complications, no funeral, no body. Just closure, she'd said. He'd been 22, angry, hurt, easily distracted by internships, media profiles, and his father's growing expectations. He didn't press. He let it die. Until now. He held the chain in his hand and realized what had been done, and what hadn't. He never looked for her. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he made a call at 2:11 a.m. His assistant picked up after the second ring, groggy but composed. "I need a full background pull," he said. "Woman named Mira Ruin. Lives with a baby girl. No birth record required. Start with utility bills, employment, aid applications. I want movement history. 10 years, if possible. You're serious? Deadly." A pause. "Understood. And look into a name she might have used before. Sarah Ellen Sorrell. Her ID may have been changed. I'll have preliminary findings by morning." He ended the call. Then he opened his laptop. Lorien never forgot how they met. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even supposed to matter. She was behind a booth at a campus fundraiser, drawing UI wireframes on scrap paper, pitching app concepts to passing students who barely looked up. She didn't smile. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. That was the first thing that made him stop. "Your spacing's off," he'd said, leaning in. She didn't even blink. "Your shoes are overpriced." He laughed. She didn't. He asked her out the next day. They only dated that one summer. She made him late to meetings because she never rushed. She told him to stop interrupting people. She made jokes during serious moments. She held his hand like she meant it, not like she was showing it off. His father had hated her. "She's nice," Lorien once said. "She's temporary," his father replied. And when the fall semester started, Sarah was gone. Dropped out. No calls. Just one voicemail. "I have to go. I'm okay. Please don't come after me." He did. For a week. Asked friends. Checked hospitals. Nothing. Then his mother sat him down with tea and a photo of a necklace. "I heard from someone she passed, giving birth. The baby didn't survive." She said it flatly, calmly, as if it had been handled. She gave him the necklace as a memento. No funeral, no record. He was 22, and numb. By morning, his assistant sent over a compressed folder of documents. Mira Ruin wasn't a ghost after all. She was born Sarah Ellen Sorrell, changed her legal name in 2016. In the past 9 years, she'd filed 4 different addresses, lived out of a car twice, applied for government housing, got denied, had 2 public hospital visits under Medicaid, 1 for childbirth, 1 for pneumonia. No emergency contacts listed, no employer of record, no social media. The baby's name? Sarah Mira Vale. Middle name only. No listed father. Lorien stared at that birth certificate until his vision blurred. Everything lined up. The necklace, the eyes, the name, the lie. He scrolled through until he found a scanned photocopy of a hospital bracelet from Mira's childbirth stay. Mother, Sarah Ellen Sorrell infant. Baby girl. Mira date, May 14th, 2016. He did the math. That summer. The timeline. His fists clenched. He felt sick. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been erased. He didn't go to the suite right away. He needed a moment, or an hour, or 10 years. Instead, he went to the company gym and burned himself out on a treadmill. 35 minutes. No music, just breathing and fury. Then he showered, dressed, and walked into the suite floor like he was walking into court. He stood outside her door for a long time. He could hear the baby cooing inside. He raised his hand and knocked. When Mira opened, she didn't look surprised. She looked ready. Mira opened the door without a word. She didn't look startled, angry, or even cautious. She looked prepared, like she'd been expecting this moment to arrive, even if she didn't want it to. Lorien stepped in slowly. The baby sat on the couch, a pacifier in her mouth, one sock halfway off, playing with a plush elephant. The room was still. Too still. He didn't sit. She didn't offer. He pulled something from his pocket. The necklace, the other one. Her breath hitched. Mira didn't reach for it. She stared at the identical chipped blue stone, the familiar worn chain, the faint engraving on the back, the one she'd scratched into it herself at 17, MS, Mira Sorel. She hadn't seen that necklace in a decade. Lorien held it gently between his fingers, then extended it toward her. This, he said, was given to me the day I was told you died. Mira's arms folded tight across her chest. That lie held up longer than I expected. He met her eyes. So it's true. You needed proof? No, he replied. I needed courage. That shook her. Just a little. She looked away, walked to the window and said softly, You weren't supposed to find me. I wasn't supposed to lose you either. The words hung between them. Heavy, human, real. She turned her back to him, staring out at the city skyline beyond the glass. I never wanted you to know this way, she said. Not with evidence, not with background checks. How else was I supposed to know? He asked, voice firm but not unkind. You weren't, she replied. That's why I changed everything. My name, my hair, my record. I made sure nothing tied back to you. Why? She turned around, the weight in her eyes heavier now. Because your mother said you'd never believe me. She said you'd look at me and see a girl who was trying to climb into your world using a baby. He stepped forward, slowly. Is that what you were doing? She laughed under her breath, but it was sharp. I was 19, Lorien, working 3 shifts a week at a diner. You think I wanted the mess that came with your last name? His jaw tightened. She said she'd take care of the baby, Mira said. If I left, she'd raise her, privately, securely, but I didn't trust that. I didn't trust her, so I left. He looked at the baby again, who stared up at him with an expression too familiar to ignore. And you raised her alone? No, Mira replied. I survived her alone. There's a difference. He sat then. For the first time, Mira leaned against the edge of the kitchen counter. I worked in hotel laundry rooms. I cleaned floors. I slept in shelters. I applied for housing again and again. Got denied more times than I can count. I kept her fed, clothed, barely. I didn't date. I didn't call friends. I erased myself. She wasn't crying. That made it worse. She wasn't trying to make him feel anything. She was just stating facts. And why didn't you tell me? He asked, softer now. She finally sat across from him, resting her hands on her lap. I didn't want to beg. Lorien looked at her for a long time. You wouldn't have had to. But I didn't know that, she said. All I knew was your mother, in a tailored suit, in a cold office, telling me you had your whole life ahead of you and I didn't belong in it. And you believed her. No, she whispered. I believed in myself more. The baby toddled over then, clutching the plush elephant by the ear. Lorien instinctively reached down, and she placed it in his palm without fear. He didn't know what to do. Mira watched the moment unfold without moving. She's smart, he said quietly. She is. Looks like you. Mira tilted her head. I think she looks like someone I used to know. Lorien looked up at her. She added, She only cries when she's tired. She doesn't throw things. She folds napkins when I do. She watches everything. He smiled faintly. She's intense. She's observant. He looked down at the toy, then slowly set it beside the baby, who crawled into Mira's lap. I didn't come to demand anything, Lorien said. Not rights, not claims. I didn't even know I'd come until I knocked. Mira nodded once, slowly. I came, he added, because I missed something. And I didn't know I was missing it until I saw her. Until I saw you. Mira's throat moved, but she said nothing. I don't want to take over, or take anything, he said. I just want to start with honesty. Her eyes met his. Clear. Steady. You're 10 years late. I know. She adjusted the baby in her arms. But I'm not bitter, she added. I'm tired. I'm cautious. I'm not angry. He nodded. Then tell me where to start. She stared at him for a long time, then looked down at her daughter. Start by knowing her name. He leaned forward, slowly. What do you call her? Mira brushed her fingers through the baby's soft curls. Sarah. Lorien froze. It's what I would have named her, she added. If I had believed you ever cared. He swallowed. I do. She looked at him again. Prove it, she said. Would you trust someone who once left if they returned with truth? Like, share, and tell us what you would do in Mira's place. Mira sat with her knees drawn up on the couch, one arm wrapped around her daughter, who had fallen asleep mid-babble. The quiet hummed around them like an old companion, familiar, heavy, necessary. Lorien didn't say anything. He knew better now. She needed silence before words. Time before questions. Mira spoke first. You know how people say a woman becomes a mother the moment she gives birth? He nodded. That's not true, she said. I became a mother the moment I decided to keep her. She adjusted the blanket over the baby's legs. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything, not even a bag packed. When your mother gave me that check and told me to disappear, I walked out with $27 and a swollen belly. Lorien listened, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. She gave me options, Mira continued. Her version of options. Go away quietly and she'd protect the child. But I knew what that meant. Disappear. Hand her off. Pretend nothing happened. Mira shifted her weight. I left campus that same day. Never went back to my dorm. Took a bus to the city. Slept in a bus station for the first 3 nights. You had no one? No one who could help without asking too many questions. She wasn't telling the story for sympathy. She told it like a record. Like it mattered to be accurate. I didn't even go to a hospital when labor started, she said. I was scared they'd ask who the father was. That someone would trace me. His heart twisted. She whispered, I gave birth on the floor of a women's shelter. Alone. Lorien swallowed, hard. You did that without help? I didn't need help, she said. I needed safety. She stood then, gently laying the baby in a small travel crib in the corner. Sarah stirred, whimpered, then settled. Mira returned to the couch, but didn't sit right away. I worked jobs people didn't want, she said. Bathrooms, bus stations, back kitchens. Slept with one arm around her and the other under my purse. Lorien slowly stood too. I didn't lie about her name because I was ashamed, she added. I lied because I was hunted, maybe not by police, but by expectation, by your mother's reach, by the idea that if someone powerful enough wanted me gone, I'd disappear again. For good this time. He exhaled. I didn't know any of this. I know. That doesn't make it okay. No, she said quietly. It just makes it real. Mira finally sat again. You don't owe me guilt, she said. I don't want it. What do you want? She glanced at the crib. I want her to grow up knowing she matters to someone other than me. Lorien nodded, absorbing every word. Mira looked directly at him now. You weren't the one who left, but you didn't look either. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, didn't explain. Because she was right, she continued, her voice lower. You knew something happened, maybe not the whole story. But you let it go. You let your mother close the chapter. That necklace? That wasn't closure. It was the start of something buried. He rubbed his hands together slowly, then said, I can't change the 10 years I missed. No, but I can show up now. However you need me to. She didn't respond at first. Her fingers traced the arm of the couch slowly, rhythmically. I've had to be 2 people, she said. The one who held her and the one who held myself together. I see that now. I'm tired, Lorien. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. I'll carry part of that now, he said. Mira's lips parted slightly, as if she didn't expect that answer. She stared at him, long and hard. You say that like it's easy, she said. No, I say it like it's overdue. The room fell into a stillness that wasn't uncomfortable. The kind of stillness that comes after storms. I didn't come to ask for rights, he repeated, or redemption. I came because when I saw you on that road, holding her like the whole world was on your back, I saw something I'd never been brave enough to face. He walked toward the door, paused. Her name is Sarah. Mira nodded. He opened the door halfway, then stopped. I'd like to see her again. Tomorrow. If that's okay. Mira didn't speak, but after a breath, she nodded once. Soft, sharp. Final. He left. That night, Mira sat by the crib long after Sarah had fallen asleep. She looked at her daughter's face, round cheeks, steady breathing, hands tucked under her chin, and whispered, "He didn't run." It was the first time in years she allowed the thought. Maybe it was okay to stop running too. Lorien returned the next morning. No calls, no driver, no assistant waiting outside. He wore a plain hoodie and black jeans, holding a small paper bag with both hands like a delivery guy too nervous to ring the bell. Mira opened the door slower this time. She took one look at the bag and raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "Warm muffins," he said. "Blueberry." I didn't want to come empty-handed. Her eyes narrowed. "You baked." He looked mildly offended. "I bought." She held the door open just wide enough to let him in. "She's napping." "Then I'll whisper," he said, stepping in carefully. The room felt calmer, lived in. The travel crib now had toys inside. A bib hung over the side of a chair. One of Mira's socks was wedged in the couch cushion. It didn't feel like a hotel anymore. It felt like a pause in someone's long, uphill life. Mira poured tea into 2 mugs. No small talk. Lorien watched her, watched how she moved, deliberate, quiet, measured. They sat. He took a sip, then asked gently, "What was she like? As a newborn?" Mira's fingers tapped the ceramic mug once before she answered. Small, loud lungs. Ate like she'd never eat again. He smiled. "She wouldn't sleep unless I sang. I used to hum over bathroom sinks at truck stops while bouncing her." The image hit hard. He didn't interrupt. "She used to grip my pinky while I changed her. I'd tell her stories about a world she might get to live in one day." "She will," he said quietly. Mira didn't look at him. "She's tough, smarter than me probably. She doesn't cry unless it matters. She watches people more than she talks to them." "Sounds like someone I just met on the side of a road," Lorien said. That made Mira glance at him. Not a smile, but not rejection either. The baby stirred. Mira stood, walked to the crib, and lifted her slowly. She didn't bounce her, just held her like breath, with care and weight and memory. Lorien watched, hands still on the mug. Sarah blinked at him once. Then again, no fear, just steady gaze. "She remembers faces," Mira said softly. Lorien rose slowly. "Can I?" Mira looked down at her daughter, then handed her over, gently, one hand supporting the neck, the other passing the warmth. Sarah's fingers gripped his hoodie collar immediately. Lorien froze. A muscle near his jaw ticked. "She always does that," Mira said. "She knows when something's hers." That caught him off guard. He held Sarah carefully. Her head rested near his shoulder, small breath warming the side of his neck. He hadn't held many babies. But this one, he didn't want to put her down. "I thought she was gone," he murmured. Mira's arms crossed gently. "So did I," she replied. "She looks like my little sister did at this age. Wide eyes, sharp jaw, hair that refuses to part." Mira gave a small nod. "She has your silence too." Lorien turned slowly toward her. "You say that like it's a flaw. It's not. It's just deep." He sat again, still holding Sarah, who had begun to gnaw on his hoodie cord with sleepy contentment. "I'm not trying to fix anything," Lorien said. "I know I can't undo years. I know you don't owe me a clean slate. I'm not handing out forgiveness. I'm not asking for it," he replied. "I'm asking to stay consistent." Mira exhaled. That meant more than she let on. An hour passed. Lorien stayed, changed her diaper. Mira showed him how. "You fold the tab in too far," she said, matter of fact. "I fold everything too far," he replied. Sarah laughed at nothing and smacked her hands on the pillow. "She does that when she's happy," Mira said. "She takes after her mom." Mira's eyes lingered on him for a second too long, then looked away. Later that afternoon, as Lorien was getting ready to leave, Mira walked him to the door. "You'll come tomorrow?" she asked. He nodded. "If I'm welcome. She recognizes your voice now." He paused. "Do you?" Mira didn't answer. She didn't need to. She reached behind him, opened the door slowly, then quietly whispered, "She only holds on to what she trusts." Lorien stepped out, didn't look back. But his heart hadn't felt this heavy or light in years. The next day, Lorien came back. Same time, same hoodie. No headlines, no entourage, no expectations. He came with a bottle of unsweetened apple juice, 2 cartons of oat milk, and a box of teething biscuits. Mira answered the door with her hair tied up, 1 slipper missing, and a pencil tucked behind her ear. She didn't pretend to be ready. He didn't expect her to. "You always bring supplies?" she asked. "I like to be useful." She opened the door wider and walked back inside. "Well, the oat milk's good. The juice is questionable." He smiled, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. "I was warned." Sarah crawled across the rug in her purple footy pajamas, head tilting up at the sight of Lorien. Her eyes lit, and she reached out without hesitation. That time, Mira watched closely. She didn't say anything, but she watched how her daughter's body relaxed in Lorien's arms like it was natural, like she'd done it 100 times already. They didn't talk much that morning. Lorien stayed for breakfast, toast and peanut butter for Mira, mashed banana for the baby. He ate only after Mira asked. No assumptions, no claiming space. Sarah babbled to her toy lion. Mira moved through the small space like someone half rested, half alert. After dishes, Lorien stood by the window while Sarah napped. Mira joined him with a lukewarm cup of tea. "You ever want more kids?" she asked out of nowhere. He turned. "Before today?" She nodded. "No. I thought I'd lost the only one that mattered." She didn't reply right away. "I wanted 5 once," she said. "Back when I believed in steady homes and Christmas cards and 2 incomes. What changed?" "I met life." He nodded. "It doesn't ask for permission." She exhaled. "It doesn't." That afternoon, Lorien surprised her. Not with gifts, not with a car or designer bags. He offered something simple. "Come stay at the cottage," he said. Mira looked at him like he'd handed her a loaded weapon. "I'm not interested in being kept." "You wouldn't be." She folded her arms. "Then what would I be?" "Safe," he said. "Just safe. For you, for her. No strings." "It's not just about the walls, Lorien." "I know." "Then why offer?" "Because it's the only place I trust enough to leave you in peace." That made her pause. "Peace," she repeated. He nodded. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned against the wall, watching her daughter sleep. Later, she agreed. Not with words. She packed the baby's bag, zipped her own duffel, and met him by the door. The drive was quiet. He didn't play music. She didn't ask where they were going. 35 minutes outside the city, nestled between modest trees and the curve of a lake, sat a 1-story house with faded shutters and a screened porch. Nothing flashy, nothing curated, just soft space and quiet sky. "You own this?" she asked. "Technically, yes." "You live here?" "No," he said. "I breathe here." Inside, the walls were painted in muted tones. The furniture didn't match. The carpet had slight wear. The bookshelves were full. No butlers, no staff, just comfort. Sarah woke mid-unpacking. Lorien carried her through the rooms, pointing out the backyard swing, the spot where squirrels liked to hide, the old birdhouse that never held birds. Mira watched them from the doorway. She didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, she let the first layer of suspicion fall. Just one. Enough. The sun set over the water. They sat on the porch with mugs of warm broth, Sarah cradled between them in a soft blanket. "She laughed today," Mira said. "Like full belly laugh." "I heard. You did something funny?" I sneezed. "She finds that hilarious." They sat in silence again, the kind that wasn't empty. He looked at Mira. "You don't have to rush to trust me." She met his gaze. "I'm not. I'll show up until you do." She nodded once, then said quietly, "I believe that more than anything you've said so far." The next morning, Mira woke before dawn. Not because of stress, not from noise, just instinct. She walked barefoot into the living room, half expecting to find toys scattered, dishes left, or Lorien gone. Instead, the house was quiet. Then she saw him on the porch, Sarah in his arms, both asleep. Lorien sat in the old rocking chair, baby curled into his chest, hoodie wrinkled, head leaned back. The sight made her pause. She didn't say a word. She just watched. Later that day, she left for the grocery store alone, a test she never announced. "I won't be long," she said at the door. Lorien looked up from the floor where Sarah was stacking wooden blocks. "Take your time." "You good?" "I'm good." She hesitated, then left. She didn't text while she was gone, didn't call. She walked down the market aisles wondering if she'd return to disaster, to a crying baby, spilled food, or Lorien gone. But when she stepped back inside, Sarah was asleep in her travel crib, pacifier still between her lips. Lorien was on the floor beside her, reading. No TV, no mess, just peace. "You didn't call. You said you'd be back." She stared at him and realized she hadn't left her child with anyone in 7 years. Not one person, until now. They cooked dinner together. Nothing fancy. Mira boiled pasta while Lorien chopped vegetables badly and oversalted everything. They laughed once, maybe twice. Mira set the table with mismatched plates. They ate with Sarah bouncing in a high chair, banging her spoon like a judge in session. After, Lorien did the dishes. All of them. No grand gestures, no romantic lines, just small things, real things. That night, as Mira tucked Sarah in, she hummed the same lullaby she'd used in shelters, bus stations, and motel rooms. The tune hadn't changed, but something inside her had. She stepped out to the porch again and found Lorien sitting with 2 mugs this time. He handed her one. "I'm not used to stillness," she admitted. "You're safe here. I know. That's what makes it strange." She sipped the tea, then said, "You didn't ask where I went. I figured you'd come back if I deserved it." Mira turned to him. "You didn't flinch when I said I didn't trust you yet. I've flinched enough in life to know when to stand still." She exhaled, not tired, relieved. The following day, Mira tested him again, without saying it. She stayed in bed longer, didn't dress, didn't prepare anything. She listened instead, to the soft thud of feet, to the squeaky faucet, to Sarah's morning coos. Lorien handled it, all of it. He changed her, dressed her, fed her cereal. He didn't ask questions, he didn't perform. When Mira stepped out at 9:13 a.m., robe tied loosely, hair messy, she found the 2 of them drawing with washable markers on the kitchen table. "Blue is her favorite," Lorien said, not looking up. Mira leaned on the doorframe, said nothing, and smiled, the first real smile he'd seen. That night, Mira called her own name back to herself. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror after her shower, brushed her hair slowly, and whispered, "Sarah Ellen Sorrell, not the fake name, not the escape, the truth." She didn't flinch, didn't cry. She just stood there, whole. Mira didn't announce it. She didn't say, "We're staying here now." She just stopped packing. The duffel bag she kept ready since the first night, always zipped, always leaning by the closet door, was gone. Folded, stored, not spoken of. She started placing folded baby clothes in drawers, bought a small potted herb to keep by the kitchen window, rearranged the spoons, left her shampoo in the shower. It was subtle, but it was permanent. Lorien noticed and said nothing, because this wasn't something you celebrated. It was something you respected. On a Wednesday, Mira went into town alone. She bought 3 things, a kitchen clock, a box of teething rings, and a broom. Lorien raised a brow when she brought it in. We already have one. That one's broken. It sweeps. She looked at him flatly. It limps. She hung the new one in the corner, like it had always belonged there. Later that night, she swept the porch without speaking, just because it needed to be done. He didn't offer to help, not because he didn't want to, but because he knew she wasn't asking. The next morning, Mira woke early and found the laundry folded. All of it. Lorien hadn't asked how to do it. He'd just done it, and somehow every outfit was in the right stack. She opened her mouth to say something, a comment, a joke, anything, but stopped. Instead, she picked up Sarah, cradled her against her chest, and whispered into her tiny ear, "You have someone, little love." Then stood in the doorway a long while, watching the house, the space, the stillness, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a guest. Later that week, Mira decided to cook dinner properly. Not survival food, not warming cans, real cooking. She asked Lorien to watch Sarah for an hour, which he did gladly, bundling the baby in a blanket and taking her out to the backyard. When they returned, the kitchen smelled like rosemary, garlic, and warm bread. Lorien paused in the doorway. "You made this." "No," she said. "It fell from heaven." He smirked and took a plate. They ate in silence, not tense, not awkward. Full silence. The kind that only exists when two people have survived noise. After dinner, Mira said something unexpected. "You can have the other bedroom." Lorien blinked. "I didn't realize. I mean, officially." He nodded once, careful not to misread her tone. "Thank you." She didn't respond, just handed him clean sheets. That night, Mira lay in bed with Sarah curled beside her. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside and the soft creak of the other room as Lorien moved. She thought of all the places they'd lived, the ones with mold, with pests, with paper-thin walls. She remembered holding Sarah during storms, whispering stories just to keep the baby distracted from the sound of rain leaking through roof cracks. This house didn't leak, didn't echo. It held them. And now, she held space for something else too. Not love, not yet, but safety. And safety was the foundation for everything else. It started with a sound Mira hadn't heard in a while. Not crying, not wailing, screaming. Sarah woke up in the middle of the night gasping, red-faced, arms flailing, sweat dripping down her back. Mira jolted upright, heart racing, pulling her daughter to her chest. It's okay, baby," she whispered, patting her back. But Sarah didn't calm. She thrashed, kicked, shrieked, not in pain, in panic, a night terror. Mira froze for half a second, brain stuttering. She hadn't seen one since Sarah was one. But this one was worse, and she didn't know what to do. Her voice cracked. "Sarah, it's me, baby. It's just a dream." The bedroom door creaked open. Lorien appeared, barefoot, shirt rumpled, eyes wide. Mira didn't even look at him. She was too focused on calming the child she'd always calmed alone. But nothing worked. Sarah kept screaming. Mira rocked her, stood, patted, hummed. Nothing. Her breathing quickened. Her hand shook. Then Lorien said softly, "Let me try." Mira opened her mouth to say no, to say, "She won't let you," but her voice didn't come. Her arms lowered. Lorien stepped forward, scooped Sarah into his arms with steady hands, and held her against his chest. He didn't bounce, didn't talk, just hummed, low and soft and slow. And within seconds, Sarah's flailing stopped. Her breathing slowed. Her tiny fists unclenched. Mira stood there, frozen, watching the man who hadn't been there when she was born, calm her like he'd been there all along. Her knees buckled slightly. She sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, tears threatening but not falling. "I couldn't do it," she whispered. "You've done it for years," Lorien said, still rocking. "Let someone else carry her now." That broke something in her, something hard, something old. When Sarah was finally asleep again, Lorien laid her down gently, then turned to Mira. She was still sitting, elbows on her knees, face buried in her hands. "I don't like needing people," she said quietly. "I know. I don't like when I can't fix it." "I know that too, but she went to you. She went to Calm," Lorien said. "That doesn't mean you failed. It means she knows she's safe with both of us." Mira wiped her eyes. "I don't want to get used to this." "To what?" "Help." He knelt in front of her. "Then don't call it help," he said. "Call it balance." That morning, Mira didn't go back to bed. She sat on the porch, barefoot, a sweater wrapped around her shoulders, coffee untouched beside her. Lorien joined her after sunrise. No questions, no rehashing, just presence. She finally said, "I always thought being strong meant never asking." "Who told you that?" "No one. Life did. Life lied." She looked at him sideways. "You're not here to rescue me, are you?" "No." "Then what are you here for?" "To stay." She let that sit, then nodded once. She didn't thank him. She didn't have to. The next day, she bought a second toothbrush and left it in the bathroom drawer. Mira stood by the stove, stirring oatmeal with one hand while sipping lukewarm coffee with the other. Sarah sat in her booster chair at the table, face smeared with mashed bananas, fingers sticky, curls wild from sleep. Lorien crouched beside her, helping her with her spoon. Sarah pointed at his nose, giggled, then tried to feed him a bite of soggy cereal. "No, thank you," he laughed. "You need that more than I do." Mira turned, watched the two of them from the kitchen, and, without meaning to, let herself pause. Not just physically, emotionally. Paused and noticed. Sarah smiled wider when Lorien wiped her mouth gently with a napkin. Then came the word, "Dada." Mira dropped the spoon. It hit the floor with a clatter. Sarah said it again, louder this time, giggling. Proud, clear, Dada. Lorien's entire body stilled. Mira froze, heart slamming against her ribs. She stared at her daughter. "What did you say?" Sarah clapped, "Dada." Mira knelt slowly, eyes level with the little girl's. "Where did you learn that?" Sarah pointed at Lorien. Mira's chest rose and fell unevenly, not because she was angry, but because she wasn't. She was stunned, unsteady, unready. Lorien stood, but didn't move closer. "I never told her to call me that." "I know. I never said it out loud." "I know that too." He waited. She picked up the spoon, walked to the sink, rinsed it under cold water. Silence. Then she said, "She's never called anyone that before." He took a slow breath. "Do you want her to stop?" Mira didn't answer right away. She placed the spoon on the drying rack. "No." Lorien's brows lifted slightly. "No?" Mira turned, her voice quiet. If she said it, then she chose it. He nodded, unsure if he should smile or not. "She's observant," Mira added. "She doesn't copy. She assigns meaning." Lorien leaned on the chair. "So what does that mean for us?" Mira looked down at her daughter, who was still babbling and smacking her palms on the tray. "It means you're not a guest anymore." That afternoon, Mira packed away a box of items she'd kept untouched for years. Hospital records, old photos, ultrasound prints, Sarah's first knit onesie, a letter she once wrote and never sent. She placed them all in a wooden chest at the foot of the closet and shut it. For good. She didn't throw them away, but she no longer needed to look at them, because the living proof of survival sat at her table every morning, and now said Dada like it was a sunrise. Later that evening, Mira stepped outside with Lorien while Sarah napped. He handed her a blanket. She didn't ask for one. "You saw the way she looked at you?" he asked softly. "I saw. She's choosing me. She is. That doesn't scare you." Mira shook her head. "No," she said. "What scares me is how easy it is to let you stay." He studied her. She added, "I fought so hard to keep us safe. I forgot how to be soft. You don't need to be soft for me to stay." She turned to him. "I need to be soft for me." They didn't say anything else that evening, but the way Mira leaned slightly closer on the porch swing, the way her hand brushed his when she stood up, The way she didn't flinch when he tucked a curl behind her ear. It all said enough. The evening air drifted in through the half-open window, soft and cool. The kind of breeze that didn't demand attention, only filled the space with presence, like Lorien had done since the day he stopped on that road. Mira placed the baby monitor on the nightstand. Sarah had gone down early. No cries, no protest. Just 2 books, a lullaby, and the gentle hum of safety. Mira turned off the bedroom light. She stood in the doorway, arms folded. Lorien was on the porch again. Feet propped, book open, cup in hand. Nothing extraordinary. But the way he looked up when he saw her, not with expectation, not with question, just with knowing, that made her step forward. No jacket, no shoes, just Mira. The version of herself she hadn't met in years. "I used to sleep with one hand on the door," she said, sitting beside him. Lorien lowered his book. "Why?" "In case someone tried to come in." "Who?" "Landlords. Strangers. The wind." "I don't know." He didn't laugh. He didn't pity. He just said, "You don't have to do that here." She looked out into the night. "I know. That's why I came outside." He nodded. She added, "Because tonight, I'm going to try sleeping." Lorien's eyes flickered. Try. Without one hand on the door. He didn't touch her. Didn't reach. He just stayed. 20 minutes later, Mira stood by her bed. Hands at her sides. She looked around the room. Nothing threatening. Nothing uncertain. She pulled the blanket over her shoulders and laid down. Sarah stirred once, then settled, and Mira closed her eyes. The kind of closing that wasn't for survival, but for rest. Real rest. In the middle of the night, she didn't wake to noises. She didn't startle at shadows. She didn't whisper lullabies on autopilot. She slept 8 full hours. When she opened her eyes, the sun had already risen. She blinked, sat up slowly, heart racing, not in panic, but in disbelief. The monitor buzzed softly. Sarah cooed in her crib, and Mira exhaled. She padded into the kitchen, hair messy, voice hoarse. Lorien stood at the stove, making eggs. He turned. "Morning." She stared at him, and whispered, "I didn't wake up." His smile was soft. "Good. I didn't check the locks. I didn't check her breathing. I didn't count the hours. You slept," he said gently. "You were safe enough to sleep." She stepped forward slowly, wrapped her arms around his middle, and laid her head on his chest. He didn't move at first. Then he set the spatula down and wrapped his arms around her. No words, no breath held, no tension, just presence, just a full-body exhale. Sarah toddled in minutes later, dragging her toy bunny behind her. She clapped at the sight of them. Mira turned, knelt, and pulled her close. Sarah's tiny arms wrapped around her neck. Then, soft and sure, she said it again. "Dada." Mira didn't flinch this time. She kissed her daughter's cheek, then looked up at Lorien. "She means it." "I know. And I think I do too." Mira didn't plan to go into town that day, but the last of Sarah's wipes were gone, and Lorien had meetings. "I'll take her with me," she said, pulling her hoodie on. "You sure?" he asked, adjusting his watch. "She'll be easier to handle than the cashier." Mira smirked. He kissed Sarah's forehead, then looked at Mira with something quieter in his eyes. "You okay?" She paused, then nodded. "I'm walking into town with a clean baby and a full night's sleep. I'm more than okay." Downtown was busier than she remembered, not because she hadn't seen crowds, but because she hadn't walked through them as someone who felt seen in a long time. Not pitied, not invisible, just seen. Sarah sat in the stroller chewing the ear of her stuffed bunny, babbling nonsense as Mira navigated the sidewalks. A breeze swept through the trees overhead. The hardware store still had a cracked window. The diner smelled like grease and cheap coffee. It was the same town, but she wasn't the same woman. At the general store, she picked up diapers, wipes, and a soft yellow sippy cup Sarah didn't need but had reached for. At checkout, the woman behind the counter gave her a long look. You new around here? Mira shifted slightly. Kind of. Which house? The Lake Cottage. The woman's brow lifted. Oh, you're his. Mira blinked. His? The woman smiled, nodding. Mr. Vale. Real quiet man. Bought that place years ago but never brought anyone out. People figured he'd stay solo forever. Mira didn't reply. The woman scanned the wipes. He's got good taste. In sippy cups? The woman chuckled. In women. Mira didn't smile. She took her change and left. Outside, she walked slower. Not because she was unsure, but because the words stayed in her ears. You're his. She hadn't asked to be called that. Hadn't claimed it. But it didn't sting. Not the way ownership used to. She looked down at Sarah, still kicking her sock off, then up at the road ahead, and whispered, What if we are? Back at the cottage, she stepped in through the front door and paused. The house was quiet. Lorian's briefcase sat by the couch. His hoodie was draped over the armrest. She saw his keys on the dish, but he wasn't in the room. Then she heard it. Soft humming. She walked down the hallway, pushed the bedroom door slightly open. Lorian sat on the floor, back against the wall, laptop open, Sarah in his lap. She clutched a plastic spoon and babbled loudly at his screen. I told you not to invest in green spoons, he replied dryly. Mira leaned on the doorframe. I ran into someone who called me his. Lorian looked up. His eyes didn't widen. He didn't freeze. He smiled. What'd you say? I didn't. He set the laptop aside. And now? She stepped into the room, sat beside him, rested her head against his shoulder. I think I liked how it sounded. Saturday morning. Warm breeze. Fresh air. Mira hadn't dressed up. Just jeans, sneakers, and a soft white tee that still smelled faintly of baby lotion. They were headed to the farmer's market. Sarah wore a sun hat too big for her head and carried a pink cup like a trophy. Lorian pushed the stroller. Mira walked beside them. They didn't hold hands. They didn't need to. People looked. They always did. Not with scandal, not with whispers, but with that quiet curiosity that sees a picture forming and fills in the blank. At the flower stand, an older woman smiled at Mira and said, Your husband has good taste in tulips. Mira blinked. Her first instinct was to correct her, but before she could, Lorian simply replied, She has better taste. The woman chuckled and returned to her bouquet. Mira stood still. She looked at Lorian. He didn't turn to see her reaction, didn't expect praise or gratitude, didn't need her to answer the label. He just let her stand there and choose silence, because silence was her answer. Back at the cottage, Mira sat on the couch with a bag of fresh fruit and Sarah half asleep in her lap. Lorian worked at the dining table, reading reports, but occasionally glancing up like he needed to keep her in frame. When Sarah finally drifted off, Mira whispered, That woman thought we were married. I heard. You didn't correct her. I didn't want to speak for you. She nodded slowly. You didn't seem uncomfortable. I wasn't. Mira looked at him. Long, deep. Then said, What would it mean to you if we were? He closed the laptop. Didn't rush. Didn't breathe loud. Then answered, It would mean I'd spend every day earning it. She didn't reply. But the corner of her mouth lifted. Not into a smile, but into something softer. Something curious. That night, after dinner, Mira stepped outside with Lorian. They stood by the porch rail, watching the lake catch the moon. I don't want you to rush this, she said. I don't need vows, or paperwork, or labels. Okay, but I need consistency. You have that. She turned to face him. I need someone who knows this doesn't feel easy for me, but still shows up anyway. I know. And if one day, people call us husband and wife again. He waited. She finished. Then I want it to be true. Lorian nodded once. His voice was low. Sure, then I'll walk at your pace. She leaned into him. Just a little, but enough. And he didn't reach for more. He just stayed. Because sometimes staying is the loudest kind of love there is. It rained for the first time in weeks. Not violently, just enough to soften the ground, smear the windows, and slow down the hours. Lorien stayed home from the office. Mira baked cinnamon scones, the way she'd learned in a shelter once from a woman who'd lost everything but her recipes. Sarah danced barefoot on the wood floors, spinning until she got dizzy and flopped into Lorien's lap. They laughed like a family. They moved like one. And for the first time, Mira didn't flinch when she caught herself thinking we. After lunch, Lorien opened the attic. It was more of a storage nook tucked above the guest room. Boxes from his parents' estate, mostly untouched. He emerged 20 minutes later with a dust-covered leather journal in one hand and a faded shawl in the other. Mira looked up from the sink. "What's that?" "My mother's writing." Mira froze. Lorien saw her reaction, paused at the kitchen entrance. "She left it in the estate box," he said. "I haven't read it." Mira turned fully now. "Do you want to?" He held it up. "I think you should." She wiped her hands, walked over slowly. Took it. It was heavier than she expected, as if secrets had weight. She waited until Sarah was asleep. The rain tapped the roof like a steady drum. She curled up on the couch, knees to her chest, the blanket tucked around her shoulders. Lorien sat nearby. Not too close, just close enough. She opened the first page. The handwriting was elegant, tight. A woman who controlled every word. "If he ever finds her, I hope he understands why I made her disappear." Mira blinked. "Then read more. Sarah Ellen Serrell." That was her name. Pretty, quiet, unimpressive. She made him late to meetings, taught him how to cook pasta badly, held his hand like she'd never let go. I didn't hate her, but I didn't trust what she'd do to him. Not because she was bad, but because she was small. In reach, in means, in world. And I was afraid, terrified he'd choose softness over power, that he'd forget what he was born for. Mira's fingers tightened on the page. When she showed up crying and pregnant, I offered a clean solution. Money, privacy, disappearance. She refused. I respected that, until she didn't leave. So I pushed harder. I offered more. I pulled strings. I called favors. And when she finally left, she left with a fire in her I hadn't expected. I thought I ended the risk, but I didn't. I only delayed the pain. Mira's eyes burned, but she didn't stop, not even when her hands trembled. Lorien asked once, "Did you ever hear from her?" I said no. I lied. I had updates, quiet ones. I knew she lived. I knew the child survived, but I never told him. Because I was weak, and I couldn't bear to watch him choose her over the empire we built for him. Mira closed the journal slowly. Her throat tightened. She looked at Lorien, who hadn't moved. His eyes were already misted. He had known parts of it. But not this, not the full confession, not the raw truth in ink. "She knew," Mira said softly. "All along." He nodded. "I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. She planned it. I believe you." Mira looked down at the journal in her lap. "She buried the truth. And I nearly buried myself with it." Mira sat still, the leather journal warming in her hands like something alive. Outside, the rain thickened. Inside, the silence grew weighty. Lorien hadn't said a word since she stopped reading. He sat nearby, not touching her, not pressing, just watching her carefully. She opened the journal again, turned the page. "If this ever finds its way to Sarah or to the child, know this. I was raised to believe love was a threat, especially when it came from outside our name. I confused strength with silence, and I mistook control for care. But when I saw that child in your arms, Mira, I saw something that terrified me. She had his eyes. And my heart. The cold part, the guarded part. And I knew if she grew up without knowing her father, without knowing truth, she'd wear that same armor I never learned how to take off." Mira blinked hard. It wasn't just a lie of protection. It was a generational fear passed on like an heirloom. one that Mira had been forced to carry alone. She turned to the final page. A short note, barely a paragraph, but it stopped her breath. Mira, if you're reading this, then I failed you twice. First, by pushing you away. Second, by not stopping myself when I had the chance. You were never weak. You scared me because you were strong in a way I never learned to be. I hope he finds you. I hope he stays. And I hope she, your daughter, never has to wonder where she comes from, because she comes from fire, from survival, from you. Mira closed the journal, not out of anger, not out of hurt, but out of fullness, the kind of fullness that follows a long, slow hunger. Lorien shifted, voice quiet. You okay? She looked at him. Her voice didn't shake. I spent so long fighting ghosts, Lorien. I know. I thought if I stayed small, I'd survive longer. You did survive. She nodded slowly. But now I think it's time I stop hiding. He stood, walked toward her, knelt beside the couch. You never had to hide from me. I didn't know that until now. She handed him the journal. He took it like something sacred, held it to his chest. She left it for both of us, he said. I think she did. And for her, he added, glancing at the hallway where Sarah slept. Yes, Mira whispered. Especially for her. Later that night, Mira stood by the crib, watched her daughter breathe, then did something she hadn't done in years. She knelt down, not to pray out of desperation, not to beg for escape, but to say something out loud. Thank you for the strength, she whispered. I didn't know I had it. But I'm not giving it back. She stood up, closed the door gently, walked down the hallway barefoot, hair still damp from the shower. Lorien waited in the living room. She didn't hesitate. She walked to him, sat on his lap, arms around his neck, and whispered, Your mother gave me fear. Lorien didn't move. But she also gave me you. Saturday morning returned with clear skies and soft sun. Mira stood at the mirror brushing Sarah's curls, her hands slower than usual, gentler. The little girl sat on the bathroom counter chewing her toothbrush handle, giggling each time Mira said her name in full. Sarah Ellen Vale, Mira whispered. She wasn't testing it. She was practicing truth. In town, Mira held her daughter close as they walked into the tiny art supply store off Main. The clerk behind the counter was older, friendly, and had met them once before. You two are back, the woman said, smiling at Sarah. And who's this beautiful girl? Mira didn't flinch. This is my daughter, she said clearly. Sarah Vale. The name filled the air like light. Not rushed, not hesitant. Full. The clerk blinked. Vale? Mira nodded. Her father's last name. The woman didn't ask anything else. Didn't need to. But the way she looked at Mira changed. Not with pity, with recognition, with quiet respect. Back at the cottage, Mira unboxed paintbrushes, sketch pads, and a fresh set of charcoal pencils. She hadn't drawn in years. Lorien watched her from the porch, Sarah balanced on his lap, both of them sharing a peeled orange. He didn't interrupt. He let her take up space, let her unfold. She dipped the brush in water, started slow strokes across a blank page, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel selfish. It felt like reclamation. That afternoon, they all went walking. No destination, just movement. They passed a neighbor's yard where two kids were drawing with chalk on the driveway. One girl pointed and said, She's cute. Is she yours? Mira smiled. She is. And that's your husband? Lorien paused. Mira looked at him, then down at Sarah, then back at the girl. No, she said calmly. But he shows up like one. The girl blinked. That's cool, and went back to her chalk. Mira and Lorien exchanged a glance. That was all the explanation needed. Later, Mira stood at the kitchen window. She watched Lorien chase Sarah barefoot in the yard, dodging her attempts to tag him with a flower stem. She didn't smile outwardly, but something inside her softened again. Because this wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't flowers and diamonds and last names. It was, showing up, daily, humbly, without promise, but with consistency. That night, Mira tucked Sarah in, brushed a kiss across her forehead, and stepped out of the room. She found Lorien in the hallway. They didn't speak. She took his hand, led him to the porch. They sat in the swing, nothing between them but quiet and night air. "You looked different today," Lorien said. "How so?" Like someone who stopped apologizing. Mira turned her head toward him. "I have nothing to apologize for," she said. His reply was instant. Exactly. The diner hadn't changed much. Same cracked tile floor. Same metal stools with torn corners. Same corner booth she used to curl up in after double shifts. Stomach tight with nausea. Ankles swollen, back aching, trying not to cry when customers complained about toast. Mira walked in holding Sarah. No hoodie, no head down. She wore a soft green dress that hugged her waist, hair tied back, face bare but calm. Sarah looked around, wide-eyed, waving at a passing waitress. Mira nodded to the host, asked for coffee. The woman behind the counter tilted her head. "You used to work here, right?" Mira turned, slow. "Yes." The woman squinted. "Sarah?" Mira smiled. "Still am." The woman blinked. "Oh." But there was no malice, just surprise. Mira sat down with her daughter in the same booth she once cried in. She looked out the window, sunlight tracing the tabletop. Then she whispered, "We're okay now." Lorien waited in the car outside, not because she asked him to, because she needed to go in alone. When she stepped out 20 minutes later, coffee to go in one hand, Sarah bouncing on her hip, she didn't hesitate. She walked to the car with steady feet. He opened the door. "You good?" Mira nodded. "I was terrified I'd feel small again. And?" Back at the cottage, Sarah napped. Lorien worked in the sunroom. Mira stood by the window and watched him, then walked in without knocking. He looked up, brow raised. "Need something?" "No," she said. "I have something." She reached into her purse, pulled out a wrinkled paycheck stub from 6 years ago. The name on it, Mira Sorrell. She handed it to him. "This was the first thing I ever earned as a mother, before I had a crib, before I had a home." He looked at it, then her. "What do you want me to do with it?" "Nothing," she said. "I just want it to exist beside everything we're building." He tucked it between 2 books on the shelf. No fanfare, no framing, just honor. That night, Mira watched Sarah sleep, then curled into bed beside Lorien. She rested her head on his chest, listened to his breathing, then whispered, "You've seen all of me now." He stroked her hair. "Yes. And you stayed." "Yes. I think I want to stay too." He looked down at her. "You sure?" "I'm tired of running, and hiding, and thinking I have to do it all alone to prove I deserve this life." Lorien kissed her forehead, then said, "You don't have to prove anything." "I know," she whispered, then closed her eyes. And this time, sleep came without struggle. 2 weeks passed. Steady, ordinary, soft. Mira painted in the mornings while Sarah scribbled beside her with washable crayons. Lorien worked from the sunroom, laptop open, coffee always warm but never finished. They weren't performing love. They were living in it, without announcements, without timelines. Until the envelope came. It sat on the porch table, marked with no return address, but sealed with a navy blue wax stamp. Mira opened it after breakfast. Inside, a folded deed, a business license, a bank authorization, all in her name. She blinked. "Lorien," she called out, voice low but serious. He stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands. "Yeah?" She held up the document. "You bought me a business?" "I didn't buy you anything," he said. "Then what is this?" "I transferred ownership of the building downtown. The studio on 3rd. It's yours." She stared at him. "You did that without asking. I didn't think you'd say yes if I did." She folded the paper slowly. "So, what do you expect in return?" He tilted his head. "Nothing. I don't owe you. Not a thing." She took a breath. "This feels big." "It is," he said. Because it's not a gift, it's a beginning. That afternoon, Mira walked into the space for the first time. It still smelled like old furniture and forgotten tenants. Paint chipped, lights dim, floors bare. But on the glass door outside was a new decal in gold letters. Sarah and Sorrel Studio. Mira stood in front of it, hand pressed to the glass. Lorien waited in the car across the street with Sarah bouncing on his lap, both of them watching her without needing to follow. She turned, eyes wet, hand over her chest. She didn't mouth thank you. She didn't wave. She just nodded once. He nodded back. It was enough. That evening, Mira stood in the kitchen barefoot, reading the document again. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she still couldn't believe she had something that couldn't be taken away. She didn't say anything when Lorien stepped beside her, but she took his hand, placed it on the page, and said, "This is mine." He nodded. It always should have been. Later, as they got ready for bed, Sarah sat between them with a sticker book, placing stars and suns across Lorien's forearm like she was marking her territory. Mira looked at them both, then whispered, "I think I know what this is now." Lorien turned slightly. "What?" "This isn't rescue, no. This is partnership." He smiled. "It's home." 3 weeks later, Mira walked into the courthouse with her daughter on her hip and a folded paper in her hand. Lorien waited outside, not because she asked him to, but because she needed to do this alone. She sat in the second row, just beneath a sign that read, "Legal Name Change Department, Room 204. The form was simple. Current name, Mira Ruin. Requested change, first name, Mira middle name, Ellen last name, Sorrel Vale. She paused over the hyphen, then underlined it. Not because she needed the connection, but because her daughter deserved both her histories. After she signed, she stepped outside into sunlight that didn't feel too sharp for once. Lorien stood by the bench, Sarah holding his fingers and chewing on a teether. He looked up, no question in his eyes, only presence. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I wrote the name I chose," she said. He nodded. She handed him a folded copy. He read it once, lips parting slightly. "Sorrel Vale," he whispered. Mira shrugged. "We both built her." That night, they had dinner with the windows open. Roasted vegetables, cracked bread, a pot of ginger tea steaming on the counter. Sarah played on the floor nearby, stacking bowls into towers, laughing when they fell. Mira watched her, then looked at Lorien, and said softly, "She doesn't remember anything but love." He glanced over. "She'll grow up knowing what that means." Mira nodded. "Because of you." He shook his head. "Because of us." Later, Mira tucked Sarah in and lingered. Not because the baby needed her, but because she could. She whispered, "You're not the mistake they tried to erase. You're the truth I carried when no one else believed in it." Sarah stirred, smiled in her sleep. Mira stepped onto the porch where Lorien sat, a mug between his palms, legs stretched out. He looked at her, really looked. She sat beside him. "Do you know what you gave me?" she asked. He smiled. "A studio." She shook her head. "No, you gave me back my own voice." He didn't speak. So she leaned her head against his shoulder and added, "And I'm not done using it." They watched the stars for a while, the kind of quiet that didn't fill space. It protected it. Then Lorien whispered, "You saved me too, Mira." She turned slightly. "How?" "You reminded me that the people we lose don't disappear." She looked at him. "They live in what we choose to protect now." He nodded. "Exactly." The next morning, Mira wrote a name on the mailbox. Not hers, not his. Just one word, Sarah. Because everything they built was for her, and because her beginning deserved to carry strength, truth, and love in equal measure. If this story moved you, if you believe love doesn't always arrive loud, but shows up and stays, comment. She stayed like this video. Share it with someone who still believes in second chances, quiet strength, and the kind of love that doesn't need saving, just space to grow. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more unforgettable moments that speak to the heart.